My wish for every woman is to really know her anatomy and to know her body through understanding the origin of certain labels and cultural conditioning and narrative around the vulva and the reproductive system of the woman. And I know many women who will disagree with me, and I also know many women who will relate to my experience. And I wanted to share something that we're going to be moving through during the Sacred Menstruation Immersion. During week 3, we work with ovulation. And this is the week that I'll be taking you through your actual physical anatomy of your vulva. And the reason why we go into this physical engagement, this physical yoga and physical meditation with what your vulva really looks like and where certain labels and names have come from is because in my experience, even when I was a young woman exploring my sexuality, I found that there were certain things that just didn't make sense to me, and it left me feeling like less of a woman. It left me feeling sexually unevolved, and it left me feeling like I was perhaps missing out on something when, as young women, we explore and we share our sexual experiences, especially in the early days. And this specific topic is around what is known as the G-spot, which is actually not the G-spot. And we go very deeply into this during our week 3, but I'll share a little bit about, why this is so important to understand and to know, so that you can make decisions about your own body and so you can understand your own body better. So my vision here is for you to understand first the origin of certain things, and then for you to decide what is true for you and what is not true for you, to leave the rest. So find what resonates and then leave the rest. So when I was growing up and exploring the inside of my yoni and working with my sexuality as a younger woman, I never ever got stimulation from what is known as the G-spot. It never felt good for me. When we were sharing in our circles of younger days, we found that some women would ask, oh, did you have a clitoral orgasm or did you have a G-spot orgasm? And if you didn't have a G-spot orgasm, you're not really sexually there and you're really missing out on a great component of sexual pleasure. And even now, at my age, 29, through all the sexuality work that I've explored, I have still never had what we call a G-spot orgasm. And I actually find this stimulation to my G-spot quite irritating and frustrating. And it's such a sensitive part of my body that it's a realm that isn't, for me, in my experience, meant to be explored until I am incredibly aroused. So I want to share with you where the G-spot got named and why it got named that way. Firstly, I want to explain that in my personal experience, the G-spot does not exist as the G-spot. Your clitoris is rather large, and it comes from all the way from where the hood is down like a wishbone into the opening of your vulva, and then there's a bulb that extends backwards just beneath the bladder. So that's why often when we stimulate that area, we feel like, oh, we're going to urinate, and it's because it's right under the bladder. And so what is actually known as the G-spot is the extension of your clitoris. And it was named the G-spot by a man who claimed that he found a pleasure spot in a woman. And also, this pleasure spot is only existent in about 50% of women. And this is fact. You can Google this, you can research this. These are the terms that are used, that this man claimed that he knew, that he found this pleasure spot on a woman, and so he named it after himself. And that's where the term G-spot came from. And for me, so it's firstly to understand the origin of that it never felt right for me to separate this part of my body from what is originally the clitoris, and also for it to be called after someone who doesn't understand fully and doesn't have the anatomy of a woman. And if we look into our history, we find that even in the medical realm, the full mapping of the clitoris wasn't even found until the 1980s. So that's pretty recent. That's pretty much within my lifetime. And so, there isn't a lot of information on it. If you Google it, if you try and find it through medical books, there isn't much information around it. However, if we look deeper, because I did so much research into this when I was exploring my sexuality and when I was being initiated into this work, and finally women are writing about this and women are sharing these stories, but you will not find it in the medical realm. You'll find it in sacred sexuality, or you'll find it in womb cosmology work, where women are finally claiming back what is originally known and originally is the actual full clitoris, which is huge and full of senses and sensory vibrations and frequency. And so firstly, the inside of the vagina, the vaginal canal, doesn't have any nerve endings. So when we're being penetrated, there's often a sensation of numbness there. It's like, there's not really much going on there. There's not really much we can feel. And that's because there aren't any nerve endings inside the vaginal canal, which is important because for women who gave birth or have given birth, if you did have nerve endings there, childbirth would pretty much be impossible. So already we know that in order to stimulate what is the bulbous part of the clitoris, the back part of the clitoris, we find that we have to be extremely aroused externally. So even though our genitals are inside, and that's really where we work with the sexual power of our kundalini, where we're rising that energy up through the cervix, into the womb, and into the heart space, now through expanding through the whole body, we find that before you enter the yoni, and I'm speaking about your self-pleasure, and I'm speaking about when you're with a partner, it's to work with the vulva, to work with the fullness of your vulva, to work with the clitoris, to work with your labia, inner labia, outer labia, to stimulate all those parts of your body, and to work especially with your perineum and with the opening of the yoni, because that opening is where the rest of the clitoris extends to. So sometimes that's why penetration, especially premature penetration, can feel so painful and so constricted and tight. And that's also why when we're stimulating and entering the G-spot so quickly, like the majority of people do, just thinking that we need to finger a woman because that's pleasurable, when in fact that's rather annoying and stimulates a lot of irritation and pain, we find it's because the body hasn't allowed itself to open yet. You haven't allowed your body to open yet. And so the yoni isn't sucking you in yet. Rather, you're just entering without real permission from the yoni. And it's also a lack of understanding that what really needs to be stimulated is the vulva, which is the outside of the yoni. That needs to be stimulated to the point where there is such a release of elixir and juices that the yoni almost sucks you in to invite you in. And we can really feel the opening of the clitoris when we can feel with the fingers or with a lingam how engorged the clitoris really is from the inside. So I want to share this piece with you because if there are some women out there, like myself, many experiences I've had, where you feel like you're just not getting anywhere sexually, or you're sexually uninvolved, or there's real pain in the yoni, just as you enter the yoni and sort of where it feels closer to the outside or into the entrance of the yoni, the majority of the time it's because we don't have a proper understanding of the anatomy of the reproductive system, and because we're not allowing enough time for the yoni to be aroused and for the yoni to invite you in. So during the third week of our immersion, we go very juicily, deeply into this, where we'll be observing the anatomy, we'll be learning about the outside of the anatomy as well as the inside, especially the inside, because there's so much we can't see, but yet we experience so much through the feeling. And we'll be exploring a deep, intimate practice with self of what this stimulation of the full clitoris feels like. And after this, you can decide whether you want to call this part of your body still your G-spot, or whether you feel that you have reclaimed this very sacred and very sensitive and very powerful part of your body as what is originally known as the clitoris.